back. We will also be gathering questions and questions or comments in the chat uh, um, the chat area. So please feel free to put anything in there, and we will circle back and try to answer as many of those as we can. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Jen Bosch. I am the Grants Program Administrator for the Oregon Department of Human Services Office of Resilience and Emergency Management. Spencer?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Spencer Carroll. I'm the Policy Chief for the Office of Resilience and Emergency Management, ODHS.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So again, as I noted, that we are going to record this session, and it will be available, as well as please put any questions or comments you have in the chat, and if we have time at the end, we'll try to answer some of those. Otherwise, we will be gathering that information and answering them, and then sending them back out to the group. Just as a moment of note, some of this information, if you were on any of our listening session meetings, some of this will be similar, but don't leave, because there's also going to be some new stuff available for you as well. So, who are we? What does the Office of Resilience and Emergency Management do? As many of you are aware, the Oregon Department of Emergency Management is responsible for our emergency plan for the whole state. They then designate different emergency support functions to different state agencies based on their capabilities. We have been designated as Emergency Support Function 6, which is mass care, and that can include feeding, water, reunification, and shelter. We're also designated Support Recovery Function 4, which is disaster social services. Excuse me. We have staff across the state, and we have broken the state up into different regions. We have in each region a regional emergency coordinator, and at least one, sometimes two, a social service emergency liaison. And these folks live in your communities. They go to school there, they work there, they shop there. And these are going to be your main points of contact for information. They know your communities, and they want to get to know you. So please feel free to reach out to them. And if you need their contact information, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will provide it for you. And the nut of why we're here today, the resilience hubs and networks. So House Bill 3409, Section 86, during the 2023 regular session was funded $10 million for us to support the needs of the community members or tribal communities that facilitates gathering and communication and distribute resources throughout the state. And so a lot of times we get questions about what is a resilience hub. So a resilience hub, as we look at it, this is the wording straight out of the bill, and what we really like to kind of put it into a concise thing is a place where people go on an everyday basis, and they know and they're comfortable with going there, and they can go there for it might be a food bank, it might be a daycare. It's someplace that they understand is a safe place. And the resilience pieces of it are places that they could potentially go to during disasters and get information and know what their next steps might be. And a resilience network is a group of different organizations that work together in the case of, well, not just in the case of an emergency, but also during everyday work. So what we're trying to do is to really break down the silos and hope that people within a community know what another organization might be doing, and then they can work together to build resiliency for their community. This could be from canvassing neighborhoods to let people know what's happening, to knowing that there's a shelter on A Street and there's food on C Street, but that everyone kind of knows what's happening within the community at the same time. So Resilience Hubs and Networks, the grant program, eligible applicants. As you can see, it's open, pretty open. And we had the opportunity to help word and write this grant, or the legislation, so that it was very open to lots of people, lots of organizations, and lots of activities. So it could be a local government, it will be tribal nations, faith-based organizations, community organizations, certs. It can be county governments. It's kind of anyone who can show us that they are going to be able to provide these resources to the community as a whole. Some of the activities include operational costs, and that can be the power bill. It can be, you need a staff person for a limited duration and or a long-term duration, but you need a startup funding for that. It can be generators. It can be water purification. It can be a vehicle. It could also be some of your typical stuff like generators. Um, if any of you have poked around in the FAQs or the application itself, you've noticed that we've partnered with AmeriCorps Rare program. We're working to make sure that that's an opportunity for folks. And I mean, just about anything you can think of, we will consider. And sorry, I just got distracted by something. um, and we're open to any new ideas as well. So the grant program, our vision for this program is to have these resilience hubs and networks be an integral part of your community on an everyday basis, to be an active center for community engagement. We want people to feel comfortable going there because they've already been going there and they know that that's the place that they can go to get more information, especially during a response, whether it's fire or bad air quality or similar to the ice storm we just had. We want them to feel like they are comfortable already going there. We want to use these grant funds to produce the public benefit. And how will you engage your communities in developing and or letting them know specifically that these resources are now available to them? We hope that we've made the application process as easy as possible. We've had a couple questions that we've hope we've clarified. But just as a general rule, there's no matching funds required. This is not a third-party redistribution. The funding will go directly to the people doing the work. This is an upfront award. So we're not asking you to do a bunch of work and put up a bunch of money and then we will give you the money back. Excuse me. We will be giving you the money upfront. If for some reason that this grant is you need support in applying for this grant, we are happy to do that. We've partnered with Portland State University And if you've poked around on our website or the grant application itself, there is a couple different links where you can click on a link and it will bring up a separate window where you can fill out your information, and that will go directly to Portland State, and then they will reach back out to you and help you work through the application process. Many of you have had questions about the typed packages, and we will look at that here in a little bit. The typed packages are kind of a unique opportunity for both you and us, and we hope that they answer some questions for you. As far as the reporting process, we want to make this as easy for you as we possibly can. We don't want this to be a cumbersome thing for you. What we're hoping for mostly is once you receive the funding and you've done what you've said you were going to do with the funding, please send us some pictures. Send us a story, one page, doesn't have to be long, about what the funding is going to do for your community or how you've used it and how it may or may not have already impacted your community. And we also would like to see how you let the community know what the funding you've received and how it's available for them to access. The one caveat to that is that if you do receive equipment, specifically, say, a generator, we are going to ask our cells, our people on the ground to go out and meet you, get to know you, have a conversation, and then just double check on the equipment, make sure it's being maintained. And that's simply so that in the case of an event, we know that that equipment is ready to go. And that will likely be a yearly process. So braided funding opportunities, we have listed a few on our website that we know of. I'm sure there's plenty more out there that we weren't able to see. But in addition to that, we're working to hire an additional contractor to help you find other resources. So in the application, it will, one of the questions that's asked is, are you looking for other grant opportunities? If you click yes on that button, once we have our contractor in place, we will put the two of you in contact and see if there's something that you guys can work together on to potentially apply for federal grants and even some of the private grants, for instance, out of the Ford Family Foundation.
If your application is selected for an award.
Yes, sorry, quantify that. Additionally, we are working really hard to be accountable for the work we're doing and how we're distributing the funding. So we, again, with Portland State University, are working very closely with them to make sure that we are doing all the things the best way we can, and where we've done really great work and where we can improve. So all of your comments and questions are a part of that, and we really encourage you to let us know what you're seeing, what's working for you, what we can do better next time. Additionally, with that work from Portland State University, we will be issuing a report to the legislature. It's not required in the bill, but we feel it's important for them to see that we are spending the funds wisely and that they're really going into the communities that need them. Additionally, this will help us show the gap. So the funding is for $10 million, but we understand clearly that there's a higher need for that than $10 million. And so if we can show that gap in funding, our hope and goal is that they will continue funding for this program going forward. So these are just some of the FAQs that we've heard that we wanted to touch base on. Regarding the typed packages, can you apply for some items as offered in the typed packages? The same items. you have the opportunity to purchase any item as long as it meets the specification as described in the grant application. You don't have to be, if you have a type of product that you're already using in your resilience hub or your emergency response and it works for you in your community and you just need more of those, please note that in the application. And if you're selected for a grant, you're more than welcome to continue to purchase those. If you don't have something and you need guidance, we're happy to help you with that as well. Additionally, if you don't want to have to worry about the procurement part of that, because we know that that is can be burdensome for a lot of people, we're happy to take that on for you. We will be doing a procurement of all of the equipment requested, and we can procure that for you and just deliver you, say, the generator instead of a check. Again, the option of receiving funds or equipment. Yes, we can get the equipment for you, but if you just want a check to buy that equipment because that's the equipment that works for you, we're happy to do that as well if selected. So here's a big one that we're getting. Do you have to apply with other community groups or your county emergency management office? Absolutely not. We are encouraging everyone to work together and to make sure that that's part of that resilience network piece. Is we want to make sure that that all of anyone who's doing this work as much as possible knows what the other person is doing. You do not have to apply with them, but we would encourage you to collaborate and note in your application that you are collaborating. There's a place that you can say that you're collaborating with other people within the community. There's also a place for you to add letters of support that you might receive from either your county emergency management office, your city emergency management office, other community-based or faith-based organizations, or what other organizations you're working with. And one of the things that we will be looking for during the review process is that collaboration. So are they working with are the CBOs working together with the Emergency Management Office? Are the faith-based organizations working with the community-based organizations? We really want to see that community network start to expand. Typed packages. So this is a piece that I'm going to turn over to Spencer because he is much more knowledgeable about it than I am. And I believe, Spencer, the next slide kind of walks through the typed packages a little bit. So
Yeah,
if you
sure,
want to take
Jen.
that, thank you.
Sure. Typed packages. Once upon a time, there was an emergency manager of Cannon Beach named Rick Hudson. Rick established 4 sites above the tsunami evacuation zone line in Cannon Beach and set up these types of packages on the 4 locations. The idea is these are places people can go to get the equipment and food or other supplies that they need to endure and shelter in place or wait for some kind of evacuation assistance. So this is a proven concept, and we wanted to share this idea out with the rest of the state because it can really be a powerful tool in building resilience in your community. So what you're looking at here on this slide is similar to what you will see in the application itself. If you guys attended our listening sessions, it was a much more easy to read slide because I didn't include all of the equipment. But here what we're looking at is a type 1 package and a type 2 package with all of the equipment included and the associated estimated costs. So let's say you are emergency manager of Grant County and you say, oh my gosh, Spencer, we just have a perfect place to put a type 2 package, and we can put those Connex containers right over there, and this would just be great. All you have to do is click that button to say you're applying for a type 2 package, and then manually enter in that amount. That's just the way we had to do it to keep our grant accounting in check. Like Jen mentioned earlier, of course, you can apply for any of this equipment individually. That's fine. If you just want some radios and some generators, that's cool too. There's a separate place for that in the application under the equipment part of the application. Um, but we see these as a proven concept and just wanted to make it as easy as possible for you guys to get your communities more prepared to respond to and recover from disasters. So I'm going to go to the next slide. This has the detailed information for type 3, 4, and 5. 5 is the smallest package, type 1 is the largest. So we put these together, with our North Star of making this as easy as possible for you guys. So if you have a place for this and you think you can employ it and use it, please go ahead and apply for it. But if you do apply and you are selected, there's a place within the application you can choose whether or not you want the Connex containers. So perhaps you want everything in the type 3 package, but you have a facility where you can store all of that and you don't want the Connex containers, that's fine. You have the option of selecting that or not. Additionally, as Jen mentioned, again, to make this as easy as possible for you, if you are an organization that has procurement rules and laws and you'd rather we just deliver the equipment instead of the funds to you, you can select that option as well. So again, these are designed to be kind of a resilience hub in a package, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible for applicants to replicate what we saw that worked on the Cannon Beach coast. Back to you, Jen.
Thanks, Spencer. Um, and I see that there's a lot of questions about the typed packages in the comments, and we will try our best to answer them as much as possible, either on this call or later, as I mentioned. So one of the things we thought would be really important for you all is kind of to walk through how this application worked. So in addition to the application link right on our website, there is an instruction link. It's a PDF. And we have walked through, hopefully, very understandable instructions on how to fill out the application. Again, though, if these things feel like they're not working for you, please feel free to reach out to Portland State University, which there's also a link there. But this is just some snapshots of what they look like. We've tried to make it as easy as possible. We tried to make it as intuitive as possible, and we want to make sure that this is something that you don't have to spend a bunch of time on once you figured out what work you want to apply for. So any feedback on that, though, we would welcome. If there's a way we can make these instructions easier for you, if there's a way that we can make them more understandable, we are open to that. But as you can see here on my little screenshot, the red arrows are the key. So please feel free to read through that. And then if you have any additional questions, either reach out to Portland State or please feel free to send an email to the OREM Grants email account. So there's also been a lot of questions about the scoring criteria. We have two separate indexes that we're using. The first is the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. So what will happen is as you're going through the application, one of the first things that we'll ask you, besides your name and what kind of organization you are, It will ask you for an address. And what we really need you to do is put in the address of the Resilience Hub, not the address necessarily where you're working or where you're living, but where the hub is, and or if it's a network application, an address of where the people you will be serving are located. And what this will do is, in the background where you can't see it, and it's by the magic of computers that I don't quite understand, but what it will do is it will populate the CDC Social Vulnerability Index and the EPA's Environmental Justice Screening Map. And what we've done is we've designated 13 different uh, uh, mapping layers that we feel are important, that meet the intent of this legislation. And it will populate those based on the address of what you put into that mapping tool. So it's really important that the address you put in is where the hub is and the network of the folks that it will be serving. So the social vulnerability index, the more vulnerable the population in that area, the higher the score. The EPA's Environmental Justice Screening Map, or the EJ screening tool, the layers of the map that we have designated will populate right into those and give us an objective scoring tool for that. And here's the rubric that we're using. This is available in a couple different places. It's available as part of our temporary Oregon Administrative Rules link. It's also available in one of the FAQs, and you're welcome to look at that and see what we're looking at. So we've doubled the score on a couple different areas. One of the areas is population per square mile. The lower the population, the higher the score. The other area that we've doubled points in is persons with disabilities. The more people within that area with disabilities, the higher the score, as you can see. And that's true of all of the areas, the people of color, the low income, limited English speaking. We've also put a couple environmental risk factors in there, including wildfire risk, particulate matter 2.5 risk, broadband gaps and people don't think of that necessarily as a hazard, but it could be in the case of an emergency if people don't have access to broadband. We've also put in there food deserts, because we feel like a lot of times that's an important resource that people aren't always, if they don't have resources to food, they become more vulnerable just by not having those healthy resources.
The reason we chose these layers and have stacked the scoring rubric in this way is because of how this legislation came to life. Very brief history lesson here. This bill started out as House Bill 2990, and it was championed by Representative Pam Marsh in Southern Oregon. The original legislation was drafted by her constituents who were very concerned with environmental justice. So the origins of this grant program were designed and intended to um, serve populations that are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And they also really wanted to get these resources into the hands of people who generally either don't apply for state grants or aren't selected as awards for state grants. So that's why you can see on the scoring rubric, we kind of stack the deck a little bit more towards rural populations and certainly populations that have less resources. So that is exactly the intent behind this. Now, when we were doing our listening tour and we'd speak to people in the Portland metro area, their feelings might get hurt. But don't despair. because while Portland Metro might have a lot more resources and a higher population, they have more diversity. So they'll get more points in that category as well. Go ahead, Jen.
I think we're ready for the next slide. So the timeline. So we are currently in the receiving applications timeline. As many of you know, Spencer and I took the last half of last year of 2023 to meet with as many of you as we could. We know we couldn't meet with everyone. We met with over 80 groups of people throughout the state of Oregon to get your ideas and get your thoughts. And then in December, we took the time to stop meeting and really write the grant documents, the Oregon administrative rules, and the application. We had intended to open the grant in January, and we were delayed by a couple different things, including an ice storm, which was super fun. We did finally get it open this month. Because of the delay, we did extend the application opportunity to April 30th. So the application will close on April 30th. So the month of May, we'll be developing a panel of people to look at the applications on the essay questions. So they will take the month of May to review those and score those. And then our intent is to let everyone know where their application ends up by the first part of June. And we hope to have all of the grant agreements and the funding out by June 30th. We know that seems a little aggressive, but we're really going to do our best to make that happen. As far as a performance period, you will have 1 year from funding to do a performance period, so to spend the funds. Now, we know that a lot of times there's, delays that are out of your control. You can't get a contractor, you can't get supplies, especially in some of the more rural areas. And so we'll try to be as flexible as we can. If you aren't able to meet that deadline of June 2025 or a year after you receive the funding, just let us know. Send us an email. We're happy to try to extend it if we can. So we wanted to do a little briefing on the Oregon temporary administrative rules. We're not going to go through all of the pieces. Is that working, Spencer?
Excuse me, can I ask a quick question? Are you answering questions?
We are answering questions at the end. If you want to type your question into the chat, we would appreciate that. So we have a documentation of that.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have set out our temporary rules. There is a link on our website. We encourage you to look at the temporary rules and give us some feedback if you have any. We feel like we're really just taking the legislation and putting it out into the rules, as well as taking the feedback we've gotten from you all. And I'm trying to make this grant accessible and easy and fitting the needs of your communities. So we a lot of this stuff is just your normal legalese, whereas you've got to define all of the terms and all of the things. But we really want your feedback and your input on this, because this grant is for you and for your communities and the people that you're working with. So it has all of the information that we think it needs. We're trying to make it again as accessible as possible. The rubric is on there. We do have to close the temporary part of it in, I believe, late June. So any comments or feedback need to be received by early June. But if you have something you'd like to comment on, we are more than open to receiving that comment, and we'll definitely consider it in the OARs.
Another thing to mention is we will be, so as Jen mentioned, we publish these rules under temporary or emergency rulemaking. We are concurrently going to start the process of the normal rulemaking, and that is going to require a rulemaking advisory committee as well as a notice and comment period. So we actually do need your comments on these rules, and we will be selecting candidates to be on the rulemaking advisory committee within the next week or two to publish these rules under the normal rulemaking and permanent process. I'll just scroll down to the bottom so you can see them all fully. But again, these are available on the Secretary of State's website, and we have links to this on our grant webpage. Okay, so now I have to stop sharing and go back to the presentation. So that's it.
That's it. So we got through that a lot quicker. I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous, so I was probably talking faster than I should have been. But that leaves us a lot of time to answer some questions. So what I would like to do is I would like to have our awesome, amazing person, Elizabeth, maybe read through some of the questions and we can try to answer them here. If we're not able to answer them here, we will be taking all of these questions and answering them in writing and getting them back out to the group as well as the recording. Elizabeth.
Okay, so the first question came from Mary Bowers. Can a single organization submit multiple RFPs?
Yes.
Yes.
So they're not requests for proposal, but you can submit multiple grant applications. Absolutely. I was speaking with a potential applicant the other day, and they were telling me that they wanted to apply for a whole mess of different kinds of equipment. And I said, okay, you might want to break those down, because in our application, if you're applying for equipment and you apply for a whole mess of equipment, we do ask you to prioritize your top 3 choices. And if that seems like a choice that's too painful to make, then I would recommend breaking your application into several parts. So that gives you a better chance to get some of the equipment, and it's not an all or nothing deal. Great question.
Trish Johnson asked, can funds be used for contracted services for consulting or other services rather than employees?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. If you want to do a training of some kind, or if you want a contract for somebody to do some work for your organization, absolutely.
One caveat to that is the state rules require you to have your contractor hold commercial liability insurance with a minimum of $1 million per incident and $2 million aggregate.
Jessica asked, and actually this is a couple of different people's questions. Do funds need to be spent entirely during the period of June 2024 to June 2025?
As much as possible. Again, we'll try to be as flexible as we can with that. But yes, we would like it to be as much as possible within that 1-year period. And there are several different reasons for that. One of those is reporting back to the legislature so that we can say we got the funds out into the communities and the communities have used those funds. And then the other piece of it is we for our accounting purposes, we want to make sure that those funds are being distributed out into the community. So as much as possible, we would like that within a year. But if there's a barrier of any kind, we want to hear from you, and we want to be able to be as flexible as we can.
So the technical reasons why our answer to that question may be different from other grants you've encountered is because these are Oregon general funds. None of this is federal funds. We don't have any federal strings attached. So like Jen said, the technical cause is we need to get all of the $10 million out the door by the close of the biennium. However, if you guys haven't spent that money yet, for whatever reason, if it's reasonable, we can work with you and we will just amend the grant award agreement.
And just to add on to that, just from previous experience from some of the other grants that we've had, even if it's the end of the biennium, and even if session is not going, we get questions from legislators about how those funds have been spent. And so we want to be able to go back to them and say, yep, we gave $25,000 to this community organization in grants past, and they spent it on this. So if we don't have that information, they start asking why. And so we want to be able to give them good reasons about why.
Dr. Sanders asked, is 15th Night a resilience hub?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Dr. Sanders asked, is 15th Night a resilience hub?
I'm afraid we're not familiar with 15th Night.
Stephanie asked, does this have to fund startup costs, or will it fund current activities?
Current activities are eligible.
Both. It can be both.
Can be either or.
Okay. Is there a specific requirement to receive grant writing assistance?
If you can click the button and send your information to PSU, that's the requirement.
Is there a PDF or document version to view the whole application?
There is not, because of the way the application is set up, it doesn't lean to that. However, you are able to go in and start filling out the application, and it will save it for you. You can go back later, so you can click through it, and the only parts that are required are potentially some of the first parts of it. If you click for example, if you click equipment, there are required pieces, but you can always go back and unclick that and then look at a different part of the application. Once you've filled out your name, address, phone number, all of that kind of stuff, then you can kind of go in and play with it and go back and forth.
You know, the other secret here, folks, is the first part of the application is just about what you want to apply for, your equipment, your services, grant writing assistance, what have you. The second part, the part that you probably want to look at and review and meditate on before you commit to it, are the essay questions. Well, here's the secret. Those essay questions are available as a part of the scoring rubric in the OARs. So if you go into the OARs and you click through to find the scoring rubric, you'll find those essay questions there. So that's really the thrust of what you would want to save from the application in a PDF or a Word doc. And they're right there on the Secretary of State's website for the whole world to see.
They're also on one of the FAQs. There is a link to the rubric as well, which will give you the same information with the essay questions.
Miranda asked, if an organization serves a specific population or demographic, does that limit their competitiveness in the application process?
I think my answer is depending on the other objective scores and the subjective scores. So I can't answer that without like running it through the process, but I would say that everybody kind of has it's a fair playing field. I don't think it leans one way or another necessarily, except for what we've already explained. So we are looking at the more rural communities. We are looking at the communities that have been impacted more by climate change or an emergency. So I don't think the focus of only serving one community impacts the opportunity at all.
You know, another way to look at it is we really want to see applications that explain how their request for goods or equipment or funds is going to serve the whole community and build resilience in the whole community. If you think about it, if you're serving the whole community, then it is also going to include that specific population that you might be focused on. So we encourage you to explain how it's going to serve your whole community to build resilience during blue sky days as well as in disaster response, and how you're going to work across and collaborate with other organizations to build this community resilience.
Okay, Nicole asked, when you say no third-party distribution, does that mean that every organization within a network needs to apply independently? Or can the network apply using a fiscal sponsor, which is one of the major network member orgs, that then distributes the funds amongst the other network member orgs?
So no. We would like the member orgs to apply. We will not be allowing a distribution system. So those member orgs need to apply for the grant, and that money will be given directly to them. We want the people on the ground doing the work to receive the funding directly.
That makes it more difficult for us to administer the grant, but it also gives us a little more control to ensure that the funding is going to the people and activities that the legislation intended. So to put it very clearly, we're not going to give someone a grant of funding for them to redistribute out. It has to go to the end user.
Julia asked, can this funding be used to create a resilience hub in a small community that could use one, such as turning one time a week congregate meal site into a resilience hub?
Fantastic idea.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Let's do it.
Michael asked, what is the average grant size?
It's about this big.
So we don't know, right? So this is our first time doing this grant. We don't know what kind of applications we're going to be getting. We are doing our very best not to peak, because we do have some applications already in, and we don't know what the scoring is going to look like, right? So we this is a learning process for us as well. We'll have a better answer to that. But what I've been telling people is to apply for what you need. Apply for what you think you'll be able to use. And then we'll just go from there. We do reserve the right to go, like if your scores are immaculate and you write the best essay questions in the whole world and you're our top contender, we also reserve the right to go back to you and say, we can't quite do all of what you're asking. Would you be okay if we did this amount instead? Could that help you? Would that help you? But we just don't have an answer to that question yet because this is brand new. So it's kind of exciting. At the same time, I know it's a little bit more difficult for you all as applying, but we're gonna just have to wait and see.
You know, another way to say this and another point to bring up is there are no limits on a grant award. However, I lost my train of thought and it was a really important point, so I'll come
New
back to it.
construction.
New construction is off the table. We're not going to fund an entire new construction of a building. But if you are building something, we might be able to fund part of it.
Can you hear me?
I know what it was, and this is important. We are not going to approve grants on a rolling basis. We're not even going to look at the applications until April 30th. So this is not a first come, first serve grant awarding process. We are going to collect all of the applications. The magic of computers are going to put together the objective scoring for each application. Then we're going to have a review panel review all of the essays and score them. And then we'll look at how much money do we have and what is the need. And that's how we're going to approach this. So don't feel rushed or pressured to apply now or April 28th. It's not going to make a difference. This is not a first come, first serve. We're not going to run out of money by the time the grant application closes.
Right.
And there's no minimum or maximum limits yet. Like Jen said, we're just going to have to see what kind of applications we receive, how they score, how many of them there are, and how we can really produce the most good across the state.
Additionally, as an FYI, we intend to have all of the funding out in this one application. So we don't intend to hold on to any and then put more out at a later date for this particular funding stream. Now that may change if we could continue funding, but for this right now, all 10 million will be spent hopefully by June 30th of this year.
The next two questions are about staff positions, eligibility for funding. If there is a community church, for example, that wants to become a hub, can funds from this grant be used to hire a current volunteer from their community to do this work? Or just the basic is what staff positions are eligible for funding?
That's up to you and your application. We are asking that you don't ask for more than 1 year of funding for those positions. That it can include burdens. So like if you're offering health insurance or that kind of thing. We're also asking for you, if you're doing that type of application, to talk to us about how you intend to fund after that 1 year of funding, because we don't want to set you up for failure for starters. Unless it's only 1 year that you need that position, and that's okay too. But we want to make sure that you're thinking forward and that you have a plan for once that 1 year is up.
Yeah, and that goes for any kind of service. Let's say you want to apply for satellite broadband internet. Okay, cool. Please apply for the equipment cost and also up to 1 year of funding for that service. Or let's say you want to apply for a shaker product that requires a subscription. Please apply for the amount for the equipment that you need, as well as the 1 year subscription service. And again, like Jen said, it's very important to also articulate how you plan to fund that after the year expires. Great questions.
When you say an annual in-person follow-up for equipment, how many years will this continue?
That's a great question. I don't
It's
know.
a very loaded question.
I don't have an answer for you. We'll have to talk to our leadership and kind of get a feel for what they're looking for on that.
You know, we see that particular aspect of this grant program as a great opportunity to build the relationship between our office and your organization. And that's going to help both of us. It's going to help us because we're going to know that we have you and your organization as a resource in your community. And it's going to help you because it'll allow you to develop this relationship with us and get support from us if and when you need it. So we really are looking at that as an olive branch and a bridge to a better relationship with you guys. The intent is to develop that relationship and continue in perpetuity. But you know, that's beyond our pay grade.
Several people asked about getting specifics for the items and the type packages. Did you say you were going to send out the presentation that you did?
So I believe the spreadsheet that I shared on 2 different slides is available on the grant webpage as well as within the grant application.
Mhm.
We do not have makes or models identified because we want to purchase these things in bulk. And we will get a greater discount if we purchase them in bulk. And also, our experts in the field know which brands to use and are trusted and reliable. So we're going to generally dictate what kind of make and model equipment is provided in the typed packages. However, like Jen said earlier, if you are dealing with Cisco switches and you need it to be a Cisco switch and you can't use a different kind of switch, cool. If you are using a Briggs and Stratton Model B generator and you've got 20 of those things and you have all the repair parts and the manuals, okay, we'll give you the Briggs and Stratton. But otherwise, we're going to need a pretty good reason to give you a one-off brand or maker model, because we also want all of the makes and models of the equipment to be the same across the state so that we can develop an easier maintenance program. Parts will be available, parts can be interchangeable. So that's our hope and dream there with the technicalities of the typed packages.
And just to add on to what Spencer said, part of the reason we don't have that information yet is because we won't know until we know how many we're ordering, what's available. So as many of you remember, a year or so ago, we couldn't get a generator to save ourselves. And so we want to make sure that what we're getting is quality, good for everybody, and available. So if we get a quote right now for something, that doesn't mean it's going to be available to us in 4 months.
Yeah, that
So-
we'll start that procurement in May. And, we'll probably have to go out for a request for applications or request for proposal. We'll have to look at what vendors are on the state contract already. And then that will determine, along with the advice of our experts, what makes and models of equipment we will get.
Will local agencies be invited to participate in the grant application review? Can counties get a copy of the applications in their area that are not funded? In case we are able to support their requests in some way, we would also like to know which organizations are funded so that we can support them in their efforts.
We've had this question once before, and at first it makes me flinch a little bit. But I think if we have the permission of the applicants to disseminate that information, we'd be happy to do so. I think that's a great idea. We'll just request that information from those applicants. Great question.
Are there required offerings for the hubs, or are there different types of things they can provide based on their capacity and community needs?
We don't, my first instinct is to say we don't have any requirements other than serving the community as a whole as much as possible.
And we know that, like we said before, Resilience Hub in John Day is going to look different from one in Coos Bay. So no, that it's for the communities to tell us what those resilience hubs need to look like to build resilience in the community.
So going into the next question, that's kind of a similar thing. Are you needing the organizations to have large spaces for community members to shelter there? Or is this a place to get information and resources near their own homes?
Both.
Can either.
Either, yeah. I mean, if they're a shelter, great. If they're not, great. If they've got the resources, it's, again, like Spencer said, it just depends on what the community need is.
Can an organization have 2 separate applications on different projects?
Yes.
Yes.
Will there be a requirement for the hubs to be available without restrictions, such as you don't have to participate in prayer or all people are included?
So the legislation didn't require that like our last grant program did. It's pretty wide open. However, we do the main intent here is building community resilience. So if the resilience hub or network or service can be as inclusive as possible to all of the members of the community. We're gonna like that better. And it's important to note, Jen and I are not on the subjective scoring review committee. We set this thing up, we built it, we rolled it out, and it's going to be the essay questions are going to be reviewed and scored by members of different regions, communities, and organizations.
If we opt out of a piece of equipment in a package, do we get a monetary equivalent or do we lose that value?
The packages are kind of the packages. So if you don't want parts of the package, but you need other pieces, you would apply for that equipment separately.
Yeah, if you just want half of what a typed 1 package is, please then just put that in the equipment section of your application. Don't apply for the typed 1 package. How do they say it in restaurants? No substitutions, please.
What can be included in operational cost?
So a lot of things,
Yeah.
utility bills, staffing costs, if you need lease payments.
Insurance.
There you go.
Can you explain more about how collaborations fit into not allowing third-party pass-through of funding? If we, the lead applicant with 2 other orgs, can we still give them funding to carry out work outlined in the grant? Or do we need to apply separately and just mention we are collaborators in a separate actual application?
The latter would be better.
Mm-hmm.
Separate applications mentioning each other. But think of it this way. Let's say I'm organization A and I apply to do this service and I'm going to need to hire a contractor to do this service. Of course, then in that sense, you're going to take our grant fund award and then pay the contractor. But we really want to see collaboration amongst community organizations because this state has not done a great job of that historically. And we want to break down those silos and encourage emergency managers to work with faith-based organizations and to work with community-based organizations. Because, for example, like I said, our first grant program, the eligible applicants were limited to local government. So then we worked to amend the law to include tribal nations in public schools. And then it was further amended in a separate grant program to include faith-based organizations, nonprofits, and NGOs. Those are the people in the state that are doing this kind of work. When the big bad thing happens, you don't go to your city hall, you generally will go to your church or your local senior center or what have you. And we recognize that. And so that's why we tilted this grant program towards serving those types of organizations, and we want to foster and encourage them working together. So,
And
I think the simple solution is if there's 3 programs working together, please encourage them to submit 3 applications and articulate, hey, I'm working with organization B and C as well.
just another clarifying piece is if you feel it's better that you apply together for one application, that's different than having, say, one master organization, then saying, okay, we got these dollars, now you apply to us for the funding. That's what we're looking to avoid. We want the work to be done by the people applying. So if you decide it's best that you apply in one application and there's 3 organizations, if all 3 of those organizations are using the funding, that's fine. We just don't want to have another application process or for one party to be deciding within a community who gets funded. I hope that clarifies.
Are capital campaigns expansion project eligible?
If you're talking about expanding a building, then yes, those get expensive. So I would reassert our right to fund the grant award in part.
And I would also encourage rather than a capital funding program, that you designate your application to a thing.
Yes.
So is it an HVAC that you want to use that funding for? Is it windows? Is it the flooring, new electrical? So be as specific as possible about what these funds will be used for, rather than just going into a capital fundraising campaign that will be generally used for a new building.
Excellently said, Jen. That was perfect.
What if it's a network serving more than one city or county?
For the application and for the scoring rubric, we need one address. So that's a choice that you will need to make internally with your organization and the people who you work with, because that's how the scoring rubric will be determined. Now, if you have an organization, let's say you decide you want to get a vehicle, a van that is wheelchair accessible, for instance. If you are selected for that vehicle, you can use it for any pieces and parts of the communities that you serve. But for the application, you will need to choose one designated address for it.
So pick the best one.
Is there an overall scoring cutoff, or are you also looking at specific vulnerability issues that are highest for that location? For example, housing and food and broadband might be higher in a location than people with disabilities in that neighborhood. So I'm curious if some scores will just pull everything down and impact the overall competition of an organization.
That's a great question. And honestly, again, it kind of goes back to we're not sure yet. I mean, honestly, because this is the first time we've ever done anything like this. And it's the first time that we've seen this kind of work be done for the state of Oregon and the grants. It might have been done somewhere that we don't know about, but this is, for us, it's very much new work. And so again, we just don't know. We're going to have to wait to see who applies, where they are, what the scores look like. We will be as transparent as possible. If people need to see the total scores on different applications, we can consider that. But right now we're just kind of honestly playing it a little bit by ear to see what happens.
If we only receive 50 applications, then we'll probably be likely to fund all of them in full. It depends on how many applications we receive, the amounts requested in those applications, etc. We just don't know yet.
If a large portion of who we serve are houseless people, how will that factor into scoring?
Again, we encourage applicants to articulate how the resource is being applied for build resilience for the whole community.
Are people with disabilities determined by the often inadequate HUD definition or self-identified?
This information that the Social Vulnerability Index map and the EJ Screen map are based on census data.
Adam had a comment that you might want to look into the Google form. It shows that applicants can see the total scoring for responses.
I don't have a concern about that. I mean, the score is what it is. And it's good for you all to know where you sit too. Personally,
You should be able, here's the thing. If you have your physical address, go ahead and go to the Social Vulnerability Index map and go to the EJ screen, plug it in there, look at our scoring rubric, and you'll know what your objective score will be before you apply.
Molly asked, the methodology for calculating wildfire risk is an out-of-state model that does not accurately reflect the wildfire risk that we face in Oregon. Could the rubric reference the new wildfire risk maps that the state has developed over the last few years instead?
That's a great suggestion, and we can incorporate that into the development of the grants in its next iteration, should that occur.
Howard asked that he was looking at the scoring items. Those who plan to serve an entire county would score 0 for a number of scoring categories because countywide, you don't have these high concentration of marginalized folks, such as people with disabilities. On the other hand, our county itself has higher proportion of folks who are seniors and people with disabilities than any other county. Seems like this will make it very difficult for countywide proposals to score well.
If you have a physical address, you cannot get a 0 in any category unless that, I don't think we had zeros, Jen, didn't we? It goes
I don't
from
recall
1 to 4 or 6. So that you just have to pick one physical address, even if you're serving a wider area. We encourage you to pick the physical address wisely. You don't have to have a lease on that property. Pick a public parks address if that serves your needs. We just need to know generally the area you are intending to build resilience in.
What if hubs are in different locations? Should there be an application for each? So that's kind of a repeat question. Are we able to obtain the full list of essay questions in section 10 without going through the application? I fear the application doesn't save while going through it, but I know you mentioned that it does.
It does say, and you can get the essay questions as Spencer mentioned through the Secretary of State's office, and then further down on the FAQs, I can't remember, it's one of the last ones, but there is a link to the rubric, and the rubric does have the essay questions at the very bottom of them. So you're able to look at those essay questions, copy and paste them, put them in a Word doc, work through them, and then copy and paste them into the application. Just remembering that there's was it 3,000?
3,000 character limit
limits
per essay, I
for
believe.
each essay question. So as you're working through those, be sure to pay attention to your character limit.
I would advise you to draft the essay answers in a Word doc so that you can count the number of characters and then refine and hone your answers in that Word doc and then just copy and paste them into the application.
And there was a few questions that I think you kind of already answered, but is suggested maximum request amount per application? Will there be partial awards for funding, or is it 100% request or denied?
No, no maximums set
Mhm.
so far. We do reserve the right to offer an award in part, and the rest we'll find out once we see how many applications and the total amount of requests are.
Will this be reimbursement, or is it upfront cost available to help with the capacity?
Upfront, no reimbursement.
If we are a resilience network, do we need to select one main hub to apply in terms of needing to insert an address? So you kind of already covered that one.
Yes, so select an address, a physical address, anywhere within the area you intend to impact. You don't have to own or lease that physical address. But I would recommend, just entering in a physical address that is in the heart of the area you intend to build resilience.
Okay. We do culturally responsive services, but our center is outside of a social vulnerable or environmental justice area. This center creates a safe space for our community members. Would we be dinged for our location that better serves our population, Black, low income, elders, persons with disability?
So all of Oregon is on those maps, and you're required to be in Oregon to be eligible for this grant. So there is going to be some kind of social vulnerability index and EJ screening tool rating for the 13 layers we chose if your address is in Oregon.
Somebody asked if you can repeat the deadline to comment on the rules.
You know,
Believe
that we're just starting that process of the permanent rulemaking. So what I'd like to say is please stand by and we will make those announcements to you via email.
or the website.
And please, if you have burning questions or a serious problem, go ahead and email us at the grant email address.
If a resiliency hub is currently under construction, would that still qualify, or does the location need to be fully operational?
No, it qualifies. And like Jen said, if we're talking about construction, please be as specific as possible. We need $25,000 to repair the roof or install heating, ventilation, air conditioning.
Does it make sense for groups from an affluent and not very diverse community like West Lynn to submit a grant application?
Well, they're impacted by disasters too, so we encourage them to apply.
Can a resilience center be purchased? Many people of color don't own land and we have to lease space from organizations that don't want us there.
Well, first of all, that's very sad. Second of all, we can provide funding for rent or lease. And if you want to purchase a building, we're not going to fund the whole thing, but shoot us an application. That's an intriguing idea. We haven't encountered that question. Jen, do you have anything to add or take away?
Nope, exactly how I would have said it.
Do organizations need to partner with a hub if they're intending to operate a network?
No.
Mm-mm. Encouraged, highly encouraged.
No, but if your organization is all about community engagement and you don't have a physical address where you congregate, that's fine. Pretty much anything that you can convince our essay reviewers is going to build resilience in a community is fair game. Not a lot of limitations in this grant eligibility.
What tips do you have for applicants to improve their likelihood of receiving funding? I imagine this would include working hard on your essays, demonstrating collaboration, and having letters of support. Anything else you would recommend?
Nope, no comment. We can't help you guys on that end.
If a network applies, then do the funding amount limits, i.e. 25,000 for a building or for building items, would it change? Would the limit be 25K per facility within the network, or do they have to share that single pot of funds?
If you have more than one need, submit different applications.
Yeah.
Could we use a portion of the grant award to make improvements to a building? You've kind of covered that, such as roof patch, flooring, to ensure there's no leaking in case of a storm?
Sure.
Yes.
Could you review your comments about addresses and hubs? I think you've kind of covered that, right? One physical address.
Correct.
I came in late looking for info on construction of training, EMS, and response types of facilities as to what is or is not eligible.
So EMS facilities, we all know serves the community. However, that's not really the intent of this grant. The intent of this grant is not to provide funding to first responders, although that's extremely important and we support them entirely. These funds were intended to go to community members, the people who are running shelters, the people who run CERT teams, things like that. The members of the community are who each other are going to turn to in a disaster, because in any disaster, EMS is instantly overwhelmed and cannot meet all of the need. And that's why we need to build capacity amongst community members. So while we're aware of an unbelievable, fantastic EMS facility that is planned to be built in Bend, that's not really eligible for these grant funds. We want to build capacity for community members like yourselves. So no fire trucks, no ambulances.
However, if you have a community hub that is considered a resilience hub and you need resources for that hub, that would definitely be considered.
Do we have to prove what type of disaster our communities are prone to?
No.
Can an organization apply for both equipment and funding?
Yes.
Yes.
Somebody said, thank you for answering my question regarding redistribution. To follow up, if the network would like to apply for resources that will be shared amongst the network orgs, such as staff, staff person to plan events, apply for grants, what would be the best way to approach that in the application? Should one organization apply for all shared resources and note it in the application that resources will be shared amongst the entire network? She said not allowing for redistribution amongst partners in a network feels like it works against facilitating collaborative networks that share resources and work together.
Again, we would need to see the application. We can't, I don't think that's a question we can definitely answer here today, in my opinion. What we are talking about as far as third party goes is we don't want to have one organization getting funding and then deciding who it gets redistributed to. So if it's a shared resource, I would say that you should apply. Again, as Spencer has mentioned, if you've got 3 organizations and each one applies for a different piece of what you're looking for, that increases your chances by 3-fold, potentially. However, if you can show in your application that this is really a connective thing and that you're all using the same resource, that makes sense too. We just don't want to see, nonprofit A saying, okay, we've got this funding. Now we're going to decide if nonprofit Z and K and L get funding and who's going to decide that. We want our application process and our panelists and our scoring systems to be the deciding factor about who's getting the funding and what it's being used for.
So I think that kind of goes into a question about can a nonprofit act as a resilience network to coordinate and equip churches to become resilience hubs? And can the nonprofit request funding to equip the churches with items such as generators, radios, or does each church have to apply separately?
I would say in that case, then the churches should apply separately because that goes straight into that that first funding party making the decision about who gets the funding or the equipment, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
But if that organization wanted to apply for staffing costs for a community engagement coordinator so that they could go and work with the churches, that would be fine. But we want to ensure that the awards are going directly to the end user recipients.
Will this become an ongoing grant program annually or one time?
We hope so.
We hope so. Right now it's one time. That's all we can promise. That is part of why we're doing the reporting process with Portland State, is so that we can clearly show what we were able to do with the funding they gave us, what we think we'll be able to see with the funding we weren't able to give grants to, and the known gap. We know there's going to be an additional gap that we won't be able to see, but we'll be able to at least show the gap that we weren't able to fill.
Can you say more about the network connections structure? Does it have to be connected to a specific site?
You need a specific site to apply for the grant itself. That doesn't mean that that's where you have to do it, but that's like, say it's a neighborhood or a designated part of a city or a community that you go out and you network with, and you meet with other community-based organizations or faith-based organizations within that designated community. We still have to have an address to associate with that networking piece. So it doesn't mean you're stuck there in that place, but we will need some type of anchor so that the scoring rubric has a place to start. So I guess explaining that in some of your essay questions would be helpful, but we do need that specific address.
So then can two typed packages be in a single application if there are two different locations, provided they fall under the same emergency deployment plan, or should they separate those?
I would probably say, my instinct is to say that they should probably separate them.
Yeah. And I saw a question pop up in the chat about links to the Social Vulnerability Index map and the EJ Screen tool. I just put those links in the chat.
Can grant funds be used for seismic upgrades?
Depends on the building. So if that building is used as a community resource center or a senior center or something, again, that is used every day in blue sky days and people can turn to in times of disaster, possibly. That stuff's expensive. So be as specific as possible and be prepared if you are selected for an award to receive a grant award in part, because those usually start at 6 figures.
We have some schools that are designated community shelters for emergencies, but we need building generators. Can larger building generators for sheltering and food preservation purposes be competitive grants?
Yes,
Sure.
again, depending on the building. And the important part in that question was the schools are designated as shelters. So because you said that, absolutely 100% eligible. We've worked and given grants to a lot of schools, and a lot of the times they don't want to open to the public, especially when school's in session, obviously for obvious reasons. But because you prefaced that question by saying it is designated as a shelter, absolutely.
Is general fundraising and grant writing itself an eligible activity, or was the grant writing support specific to applying for this grant?
There are both. So you can ask for help in filling out this grant's application, and Portland State University is under contract with us to give you that support. Within the grant application, you will be asked, hey, do you want help writing an application for other grants? If you're selected for an award, then we will send to you a real hotshot contractor that's really good at writing grants and help you write a successful grant application for someone else's grant.
Okay, folks, it looks like we're coming up on time here. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank everybody who's joined us. Again, we're going to capture all of these questions in the chat and we'll be replying.
Including the ones we didn't get to.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll be replying to those in writing and sending them back out to the group. And like, if you have any questions that we don't answer through this process and the reply, please feel free to reach out into the OREM grants at odhs.oregon.gov email account, and we will do our best to answer them for you.
Well, with that said, thank you all very much for your time and interest. We look forward to your applications and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.